Nú ætlum við að horfa aðeins fram á við. Ljósastýring hefur verið nefnd sem ein möguleg lausn hérna á umferðarteppum í Reykjavík. En þetta eitthvað raunverulega sem gæti breytt leiknum fyrir okkur? Til að svara því höfum fengið til okkar hann Anders Palm, en hann yfirmaður Development Roadside Systems hjá Svarco Technologies í Danmörku. Við höfum öll notið góðs af tækni Svarco Technologies án þess að gera okkur kannski grein fyrir því. En Svarco Technologies alþjóðlegt tæknifyrirtæki sem sérhæfir sig í snjöllum umferðarstýringarlausnum og innviðum í borgum út allan heim. Við ætlum því að fá að skipta örstutt yfir í ensku. So, Anders, I hope that you understood that introduction, but to summarize for you, I've basically just said that you're our savior, you've come here, you're going to fix all our traffic problems, and everyone here in this room and people that are watching the live stream are very excited to hear how you're going to do that in the next 10 minutes. So,
no pressure
you have to state.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. So I have to start out with saying, I've listened intently this morning. I don't understand you at all, but I think it's mainly because I don't speak Icelandic. It's my first time visiting up here. It was not hard to find a pretty picture because, wow, it's a pretty place. Shortly about, there were already some words about who I was and where I'm from. I just want to say, I'm from Denmark. And before you think, here comes the colonizers telling us what we need to do again. We do produce a traffic light controller that we do sell in 60 countries. So don't worry, I also try to tell the other 59 countries what to do. We do 3,000 to 4,000 controllers per year. If you're making iPhones, that's not very impressive. If you're making traffic light controllers, that makes you one of the largest ones in the world. Problems. So this part I understand very well. You have some problems with traffic. This is not uncommon. We know this from many places around the world. So I'm just, coming up. I've quite simply prepared sort of two things. One is problems, the other one is solutions. So it's, kind of easy. Some of these statements are what you could sort of encounter and say, we have these problems and we cannot do anything with traffic control because of traffic is saturated. Or we cannot get the buses through the city, so people don't want to take the bus, and pedestrian is a problem because they are holding up traffic control. So, okay, too bad. Let's build some bridges and some tunnels, and that's the way to do it. But before we do that, there are maybe some low-hanging fruits that we could explore here, because the cost of doing some of these things with traffic control, compared to building bridges and tunnels, the fruit is so low-hanging. I have to probably jump off the stage here to get down to them. I'll use a couple of minutes here to make you all experts in sort of the definitions of traffic control. I'll be handing out diplomas at the end. So this is sort of the overview of how traffic control works. Fixed time is sort of the most basic traffic control. It's been around since basically someone invented the traffic light controller. The controller is just doing the same thing, the same timing of green and red all the time. And, I would love to say this was how we did it in the past, but to be fair, if you look worldwide, it's something like 70% of all intersections in the world that they are just running on fixed time. The next step up is what we call VA, vehicle actuated. It has many names depending on where we go. But basically what it means is we put a loop, a piece of wire in the ground, and whenever a big hunk of metal is going over, we can see there's something, and we say, aha, there was something, so it would like to have a green light, or we would like to extend the green light because there was something there. This is, where we mostly are. This is where, in terms of signalized intersections, probably in Reykjavik, where we are. The next step up to try and do something better is what's called adaptive. This is also not quite a new concept. The largest players in this are a big system called Scoot, which is a UK system, and SCATS, which is an Australian system. That's probably the largest in the world because there are cities in Southeast Asia that use it. And I mean, for them, a medium-sized city is like 30 million people. So that's quite big. What we do and what we're quite proud of doing in our traffic light controller is that we build this technology not into a big central system, but into the controller itself. And it makes it very flexible that you can do some things like this with just a controller on one intersection and scale it up to where you need it. So you don't have to buy a big system that you deploy to the whole city and hope for the best. You can sort of, see what the results are, do it here and do it there. So what we do with adaptive is actually we sort of adjust this vehicle actuated control, because there has to be some parameters around vehicle actuation that says something about for how long can we extend the green light, because otherwise you could imagine in a busy intersection in the morning when the sort of main direction where there's the most traffic, it would just be green in one direction for 2 hours, and I think the people who are in the other direction would be quite cross. Not just the light would be red, but their faces would also be quite red at the end of this period. So to adjust these limits is actually key to making a better traffic control, and this is what we've sort of tried to do with adaptive systems over the years. So something new has popped up. This is what we call real-time traffic, and what it is we took sort of 4 years ago and said, with the new stuff that is happening with detection of vehicles, what are we actually now capable to do? So beforehand we'd say, okay, everything doesn't matter if we had a camera or if we had a radar or whatever, we were still just drawing squares on the road and saying this is just like a loop, because that's how traffic algorithms work. But what if we threw that out the window and we made a traffic algorithm that doesn't work on loops, but rather it works on the position and speed of all vehicles? So what you see here is the web interface of our traffic light controller, and I don't know how often you look into web interfaces of traffic light controllers, so I don't know if it's impressive to you, but it is to me, because what you see here is basically the traffic moving around on the intersection in real time. And obviously, once you have a lot more information, it's not just, a loop is like someone lying in the road and looking up and says, yes, I see something, or no, I don't see something. Now we actually do see the full picture, and that enables us to make a much better traffic controller. But it's also kind of a lot more data that is going on inside the controller, and it's not so easy to just set up some logical rules for extension of green and these kind of things. So we do employ artificial intelligence in this case to keep track of all this traffic that is going on, and it's visualized here with, I will not go into detail because then someone will kindly ask me to go away in a couple of hours, but visualized here, what is the traffic situation? Why is it making the decisions it is making? And so what is the effect, and how could this help you in Reykjavik? So this is from an intersection in Denmark where we deployed the system. The top here is TomTom data, so this is travel time data gathered in the intersection, and they had especially one direction. This was the left turn. This is the black graph that you see up here, where during it's quite easy to see where the morning rush hour is. It's we are topping up at like 300 seconds of travel time through the intersection with a normal of about 50 or something like that. So that's quite a lot of waiting time. And what happened when we put the system on is what is below, and you can see quite a difference. And I want to make a point here about sort of this statement that we are saturated. There is so much traffic, we cannot handle it no matter how good we are. It's not quite true, because what happens is once the traffic is building up before the rush hour or up to the rush hour, the longer we can wait to build up queues, the much better we are off. Because once we start to build the queues, it will inevitably take a long time to get them out again. So the important thing is not just to see that we've gone from 300 seconds of travel time to topping at 200 seconds of travel time, but please do see that anyway, but also that the time we have this peak is getting shorter. And if we are really lucky, and I just happened to choose the point where we were really lucky, here on the third day here in the after data, actually we managed to push this spike so long together that you can barely see that there was any peak, any rush hour today. Please don't come back in 2 years when you put this on all your intersections and tell me, we still have rush hour. I will not guarantee that I can make it magically go away, but I'm saying there is a better way to do it. So obviously the municipality, they were quite keen to look at, because they had done some trials already to see, can we fix this problem by adjusting, as I said before, these parameters, for how long can we be green in one or the other direction. What they found is they ended up in sort of a game of whack-a-mole, where they said, okay, we solved the problem here, we just make another one over here. So we did a study with them to say, okay, what was actually the full impact? Because obviously there is no free lunch. You cannot just, magically pull green light out of thin air. But the point is to make much larger winners than you are making losers. So what you see is a little bit worse travel time, in some directions in this intersection, but massively improvement in other directions. So there's a way to optimize, your traffic logic, or to work with the system with advanced detection that will make, an impact here now. Then there's another thing that's over time, and I did, notice some of the graphs here from the previous presentations. What happens is also traffic is growing over time. And ideally, because these traffic plans that you have in the traffic control, you should go back and visit them every year, every 3 years, whatever, because traffic has changed. And a traffic engineer will sit and make a new plan, but in reality they won't. Because if you start to count how many hours, how many people, traffic engineers you needed to keep all these intersections up to date, you realize why you're not doing it. It's simply too expensive. So what we see here is a comparison of sort of different models. So what we did is we took a Swedish intersection and we just turned the traffic up. So we said, okay, this is a normal day. We put in 10%, 20%, and 30% traffic, more traffic on top of this. So what happened is, at the beginning you can see there's not that much different in the different solutions. So down here, ITC TA is our sort of VA, that's our traffic controlled algorithm. Smart intersection, that is our adaptive algorithm, and Smart AI, that is then our sort of real-time traffic algorithm. And at the beginning, there is a small difference, but once we turn up the dial, you can see there is suddenly quite a lot of difference between sort of the two other solutions. And if I had shown this graph for 5 years ago, when Smart Intersection was what we were really proud of, I would obviously on the right-hand side have zoomed way more in between the red and the green, and I would have been very, very happy to have delivered something like 5-8% or something improvement over here. This would really be, excellent, outstanding work. But I mean, this is a complete game changer. So in this intersection, we turned, as I said, the traffic up by 30%. And what happened? We tested for 1 hour between 7 and 8 in the morning with the extra traffic. And we saved in total for the traffic volume that was there 34 hours of wait time during 1 hour. So multiply that up by 200 working days or something like this, and multiply it up by a number of intersections. It makes a large impact. How do we do that? The thing that we do is we have a much more dynamic control. So it means, normally if you zoom out a little bit of the traffic, you will see that when you start the rush hour, the amount of vehicles are going up. And what you want to do is then you want to increase overall the green time that we give on each direction, because you want to minimize switching between directions, because every time you switch direction, what will happen is you have an intergreen. We cannot have people, going together in the middle of intersection, so you will need to have a little bit of a stop where no one is using the intersection. We call it sort of lost time. And to minimize lost time, we say, okay, let's switch it less often. But what we found is that's fine, but the issue is traffic is not just going up and down in this nice slide. Actually, when we zoom in, there's a lot larger differences. So what we do is actually we can see that there are major differences from cycle to cycle in the intersection. So that brings me to pedestrians, because the issue I walked around the city yesterday and had a little bit of a drive around, is that in a lot of places you will bring pedestrian in on the green, meaning that when the vehicles have green, the pedestrian automatically also gives a green, and they run for 25, 30 seconds or something like that. That makes it very hard to compress this and respond to what is actually happening. So one thing, you have these already, but a lot of them don't have sort of the button there, because you put this in. I understand that this is sort of a political decision, also based on safety, because of course what you are usually worried is someone comes up to the vehicles have green and they push the button, nothing happens because the vehicles already have green, and they walk, they cross on red, and we put them in hospital. And of course, the step one in traffic control is don't put people in hospital. That's generally a very bad idea. So, but there are technical solutions to these kind of things. First of all, to actually use the push button to give green when there's someone who pushes, or to give a longer green if someone has pushed, and a shorter one just for people who are already there to pass if they haven't pushed, or to have detection. So with camera system or with LiDAR system, we can have very good detection of pedestrians. So it is possible to do a control where we take them into consideration also. And the last bit, before someone kicks me off stage here, buses. So first of all, we have to remember the good that you do for traffic in general reflects also on the buses. So if we improve, in generally the waiting time or delay for vehicles, buses are also vehicles, so they will benefit. But, of course, there is a matter of priority. If you want to make buses a compelling way for people to travel, one thing you can do before you start building dedicated bus lanes and put a lot of money into infrastructure is, of course, a bus priority system. We have one, it's not me that develops it, it's made up in Sweden, in Swago, that's called Smart Priority, and it's a fairly low-hanging fruit because it integrates the GPS position that are probably already in the buses. The bus operator will already have position of all the buses, and that can be, just basically communicated to the intersection to say, okay, now there is a bus, please give it priority. The nice thing about it is also depending on what kind of data is available on the bus, you can do a much smarter priority than just having local detection of the bus, because obviously you don't want to give sort of priority to a bus that is already ahead of schedule, if that ever happens. So you can give more priority if they are behind, less priority if they are ahead, or even, depending on the data you have available, maybe you want to give more priority to, a bus that is full of people than to one that is empty of people, or, whatever. And one of the things, we can do with this new algorithm is basically we can say if we can measure it, we can place a value on it in the traffic control. So whatever you can measure, be it, the position of the vehicles, the amount of people in the buses, the weather, whatever you like, if you can measure it, we can sort of place a value on it in the algorithm, and that will make it act, according to what input there is. Yeah, so that was basically it. I don't know if I managed to keep time for questions. Otherwise, I will hang around a little bit afterwards, and if someone is interested, just grab a hold of me.